This is Me Before Mom, the podcast that helps moms stay connected to themselves while doing the most important job they'll ever have. And I'm your host, Bert Anderson. Hey, this is Bert Anderson, and you are listening to Me Before Mom. So I have a question for you. Should we have best friends? I know. You're probably saying to yourself, yes, absolutely. I'm going to tell you my answer, and my answer is no. Now just hold back the shock and awe at that. I'm going to tell you a little story. This happened when my son, I think my middle child was turning a year old, and my son was 3 years old. And I had a friendship with this woman. We were first-time moms together, and we talked every single day for hours on end on the phone. I remember it distinctly because, sometimes you have those conversations with friends, and it's almost like a DTR, define the relationship. If you don't know what that means, that's what it means. But we had a DTR, and we basically said, "You're my best friend." Even saying that now, I feel really ridiculous. Will you be my best friend? But we did. We said that to each other. And I don't know if it was the postpartum emotions that I had or the hormones or what. But all of a sudden, this woman was everything to me. Everything. And I wanted her to be my everything. And if you can tell by the tone of my voice, things did not turn out nicely. Her husband didn't really get along with my husband, and then her husband decided to send a somewhat hurtful email, and I was burned. I was broken because here was this best friend of mine who was supposed to be everything for me, and I felt betrayed and really hurt. And then it made me kind of look at all of my friendships for all of my life. So I am a military brat. I grew up moving every 2 to 3 years. And whenever we would move, I would find a quote unquote best friend. When I think about it, I don't remember my parents ever teaching me to have a best friend. I think I probably picked it up from a TV show because I know my children will talk about having best friends, and it's definitely not something that I have taught them. So the idea of having a best friend was always kind of fluid because every single time I would move, my best friend would change because, part of being in a friendship is being in proximity with somebody and being close to somebody, physically. So the thing with my friend, it ended, whatever. We are cordial now. We did apologize to each other, but we were never able to come back from that because it was just too much. So it really got me thinking, should we have best friends? And if we do have best friends, should we broadcast that to the world? This is my bestie. This is my BFF. And I see it on Facebook and other social media platforms all the time. People are very forthcoming with, here's my best friend. And you kind of feel like that person, both parties are untouchable. You know what I mean? Think about that. You kind of you hear oh, well, she can't be my friend because, they're best friends. And so clearly I'm not going to be. There's an exclusivity that comes with using the term best friend. So I kind of have, I don't know, maybe it's a backwards way of thinking, but it takes a lot for me to admit or call somebody a best friend. So the defining keys for me are how long I've been a friend with somebody. And I do have best friends. I have a best friend from high school. We have been friends since we were 16 years old. There are times where, I do not talk to her every single day. We can go months without talking. She lives in Oregon and I live in Minnesota, but we can pick up the phone and, pick up right where we left off. I can see her in person and it's like no time has passed by at all. I have a cousin whom I consider a best friend. We have been to hell and back through different situations in our lives. I haven't seen her in 4 or 5 years. Like those types of friendships are the things, those are the relationships that have like stood the test of time and distance for me. And so it's really hard for me to allow myself to call somebody a best friend if those tests haven't happened. And I have a hard time because I'm finding that what I'm doing is I'm teaching my children the same thing. And I don't know if it's turning them into jerks. Because it's like the cool thing to be at school and be like, this is my best friend. And then they'll say, well, my mom says I don't have best friends. Like I've heard them say that to other kids. I'm like, oh, that's not really what mommy meant. But I did say, yeah, we don't really have best friends. But my whole point is that like, I feel like we just kind of make other people feel bad when we put that title and that label on somebody. So, if you're like, she's my BFF. Like, how does that other woman feel who's sitting there who thought that you guys were really, really good friends? Plus, like I kind of explained with my story of my best friendship that ended, I put a ton of pressure on that friendship. I relied on that friendship to be everything for me. And I relied on my friend to be everything for me. And eventually that is what crumbled the foundation of our friendship. It just got to be too much. But our own insecurities, I think, is sometimes what puts the burden of having a best friendship. For example, when my friendship happened, I'm not going to call it a toxic friendship because it wasn't a toxic friendship. But I was feeling so insecure in myself as a person, as a woman, that I was relying on my friendship with my other first-time mom friend to build me up and make me who I was. And so it was like my own insecurity is ultimately, because then it's ultimately what ended our friendship. I started feeling really insecure when she would talk to other people and have other friendships. And I would get jealous very easily when she would talk with other people. And that's just like now, even saying it now, because I have perspective, but I was in a very insecure space when she and I were forming our friendship. And we kind of both cultivated that insecurity in each other because we were very dependent on each other. And it was almost like we were in our own little worlds. It was lovely. It was fabulous to have that kind of a friendship that was dependent. Like she was dependent on me and I was dependent on her. But at the end of the day, it was so unhealthy. And so I think like, while maybe I say like, no, I don't think that you should have a best friend. What I'm saying is I don't think we should put so much stress on the label of a best friend. Looking at social media has really made me feel like, we call the people that we're connected to on Facebook, we call them friends. But how many of those people are you actually friends with? There are people that I am quote unquote friends with. I almost did the air quotes. If you want to picture what I'm looking like, I almost did air quotes for you guys. There are people that I'm friends with that I've never met in real life. I've never, and probably will never meet these people in real life. We are connected by somebody, and usually it's through the blogging community, and we don't even know each other. And so then it's like, okay, well then I think in today's culture, a best friend is somebody that you had that stood the test of time with you and has seen you through the thick of it. And a friend is somebody you know in real life, and an acquaintance is somebody that you don't know well. That's what I'm trying to teach my kids. I don't know why I'm trying to teach them about friendships, but I'm trying to help them navigate just the relationship waters now while they're young, so they understand to not put a ton of pressure on a relationship to the point where it makes that relationship break. And I don't want them to make other kids feel bad because, like I said, I moved every 2 to 3 years. So I was the new kid who would come in and would feel left out. I mean, it just is a natural part of moving. You are the new one who doesn't know anyone. So everybody else has all of these friendships, and you have 0 friendships. So comment and tell me what you think of this, because when I try to explain it, sometimes it feels like it is like not making a ton of sense. But at the same time, I think it makes a lot of sense in my mind, in my Bert mind of verbal processing, where I just, kind of word vomit all over you guys. So thank you for listening to the word vomiting. But tell me what you think. Like, should we have the label of a best friend? But more importantly, what defines a best friend for you? What is a best friend? Who is a best friend? And then what happens if that label is tested and you break up? And then how are we teaching our kids how to navigate these friendship waters? Do you encourage your kids' relationships with their best friends? Like if they say, she's my best friend. My daughter will say that people are her best friends all the time. Like everybody is her best friend. And really what it is everybody is her friend. My son probably does have a best friend. And it's this little boy that used to live in our neighborhood, and they have been going to school together since preschool, but he doesn't say best friend either. So my kids are like, they're following suit with we don't have best friends. And sometimes I wonder if maybe that's a good thing or if that's a bad thing. Regardless of my own philosophies on friendships and what I'm teaching my children, what I do know is that I should be kind to myself. And you should be kind to yourself too. Just be kind and don't put a ton of stock and confidence and just who you are in the relationships that you have with other people. Just be kind to yourself. Let's talk about exclusivity. I think the reason why using the label best friend makes my blood boil is because there is a little part of me that is still the new kid at school who doesn't know anybody in the class. And when you are stepping in as a child and you are the new one, you learn to observe the relationships that you're witnessing around you and then try to figure out how to adapt and fit into the situation and do it quickly. You have to keep in mind, I had 2 to 3 years to build a life in a community for myself as a kid, and that's all that I had. So I have always been very in tune with watching people and figuring out you go here and she goes there and I go here and where do I fit in. And so I think when we use the term best friend, it's a very exclusive, it's almost like me saying this is my husband or this is my boyfriend. Like you cannot have this person. You cannot have a relationship with this person. And the same thing I feel like happens with the term best friend. I interpret that as, well, I'm not going to try to get to know you well because Sheila over here is your best friend and so you don't really need a friend. And so I think as the military brat that I am, I still assess a room and a relationship with people that same way that I did as a child, like stepping into, my 5th grade class at Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's where I went to school in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I walked in with my northern accent with all of these southern children, and I was the Yankee. And so I quickly had to assess the room and figure out how am I going to fit in and who am I going to be friends with? And it's like, oh, well, Valerie has a best friend. So I can't be friends with her. And Jana Marie, how southern is that? That was a really southern name. That was this girl's, that was her name, was Jana Marie. But she didn't have any friends. At least she didn't have a best friend in the class. That's the kicker. She had no best friend in the class. And so I latched onto her because she was available to me. So I think that for me I don't know. I think the exclusivity of any type of a label is really what I think turns me off by saying the term best friend. It just drives me crazy. It honest to goodness drives me crazy. And then there's a little part of me that's like, we are grown women. Why are we still using the term best friend? Like, why do I need to say on Facebook? Because I've seen these like, oh, I just love my best friend. I love my BFF. Why? Why do we need to do that? It's kind of like, why do we have to declare our best friend love to the world? Like, I just don't. It makes everybody around you feel awkward, and it makes them feel like they're not that you're not important, but you're not, you're not exclusive. They're exclusively aligned with this person. I hope you guys converse with me on this, because I have a feeling that maybe I'm just like playing into my inner child. Inner child like insecurities of having to fit in to a new school and new setting, like, every few years growing up. But there is something like that is really exclusive, I think, about the term best friend that just really drives me crazy. And even the girlfriends that I have that have stood the test of time, and we've been through a lot together, and they really are my best friend. Like, I have a hard time even right now saying I do have best friends. Like, it's very challenging for me to say she's my best friend. And I don't know why. So when I was very good friends, best friends, with my first time mom friend, it was not only was I was going through postpartum depression at the time. So I was in a very, very dark place in my life. And I was a first-time mom. If you are listening to this and you are a first-time mom, I was staying home at the time as well. So we had made the decision, my husband and I, that I was going to stay at home. Life was very lonely. My son was born in November, and I live in Minnesota. It was not springtime until the end of March, beginning of April. That is a very long time to be cooped up in a house by yourself. So this girlfriend of mine, who was also a first-time mom, her child was a little older than mine was. And so we would spend hours on the phone with each other. And she became everything to me because she helped me fill up my identity, so I didn't feel not only as alone, but I felt like I was more than just the human milk machine person who wiped butts all day long. We would talk on the phone for, an hour and a half or 2 hours at a time. And that is totally fine when you are in the throes of that first time motherhood thing and you have an infant with you. It is really hard to get out there and socialize, because so much of just the mechanics of getting out of the house with an infant is just challenging in and of itself. So if you have somebody that you talk to all the time, I want you to hear that's fine. What wasn't fine for me was that she, being her friend and her best friend, became my identity. That was my identity. So, in this whole idea of me before mom and what it means, it's so much more than that for me. So for me, our friendship and being best friends, that was my identity. That's who I was. In a way, I started to act that out in relationships with other people. And I actually have a really good friend who was friends with me at that time. And we've been friends, for 11 years now, because we were friends before kids. And I kind of pushed her away because she didn't have a child. They were struggling with infertility. And as much as I said, well, we're including her, we were excluding her. She was excluded. I mean, how could she not be excluded? When my mind was so wrapped up in being this woman's best friend and being a mom, I didn't have any time for my other friend, who really, when I look at things, has been there all the time, like never wavered, never left, and has really kind of accepted me and accepted our friendship as it's been. So, that is why I think just using that term best friend to me there's an identity piece in it that I have a really hard time with, because it feels very, I don't want to say hollow because it's not hollow, but it feels, I don't know, it just feels very dependent. And I think it's because I came from a place of being extremely dependent. Like I think about my roommate in college. We were together all 4 years of college. We were best friends. She was in my wedding. We graduated. We were in two totally different stages of life. And all of a sudden, we grew apart. But there was a part of me that looked at this friendship like, well, we're best friends. Like, you can't divorce me. You're my best friend. And we didn't have a falling out. We just grew apart. It just happened naturally. It hurt like you would not believe. And I didn't understand what I was doing wrong, but we were in two totally separate places. I was married. She was single. We had very different lifestyles. And so we just grew apart. But there was a part of me that felt like a part of my identity died because we were no longer best friends. So it's the identity piece of that best friend ship, I guess I would say. That's what I struggle with when I say that somebody is my best friend. Like I will recognize and say to people like, you are my best friend. But I know who I am now. Like I've spent a lot of time figuring out who is Bert as an individual, not as a mom or as a wife or as a best friend, but who am I? And I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Who are you? Who are you when everything is stripped away, all of your titles of mom, wife, girlfriend, best friend, fiance, single, and just get rid of the title and figure out who she is. Who is that person? And I think once you are grounded in that and that's solid, that's when you can really build meaningful relationships with the people who are around you, because you're not looking to them and assigning a title to them to help you know who you are. Because you can't, another human being can't define who you are. That's just, it's not, if you're looking for another human to assign a definition of who you are and help you find your identity, I mean, it's going to be lost. You're going to be lost, and they're going to disappoint you time and time again. Time and time again. So get to know who you are. I'm not going to tell you to make yourself your best friend because that just sounds cheesy, but get to know yourself. That's all we have. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to connect with me on bertmanderson.com, and please visit our website, matriarchdm.com, for all of the show notes and to hear other awesome podcasts.